embarrassing story. So let's begin. Let us turn to the Quran, chapter 66, verse 1. It says, quote, يا أيها النبي لما تحرم ما أحل الله لك تبتغي مرضات أزواجك والله غفور رحيم, which translates as, O Prophet, why do you forbid yourself that which Allah has made lawful for you? You seek to please your wives, and Allah is forgiving, merciful. Now, in order for us to understand the historical context of this Quranic revelation, we first need to turn to the tafsir or exegesis literature for an official Islamic commentary on the Quran. When we do that, we find something very disturbing. In Tafsirul Jalalain, which is one of the most popular classical commentaries, we read the following explanation of Quran chapter 66 verse 1. Quote, O Prophet, why do you prohibit what God has made lawful for you in terms of your Coptic handmaiden Mariyah, when he lay with her in the house of Hafsa, who had been away, but who upon returning and finding out became upset by the fact that this had taken place in her own house and on her own bed, by saying, she is unlawful for me, seeking by making her unlawful for you to please your wives. And God is forgiving, merciful, having forgiven you this prohibition. Now we are starting to understand what the Quran is actually saying in chapter 66 verse 1. Muhammad's wife Hafsa caught him in her house and on her own bed having sex with another woman. Muhammad was not married to this woman, she was only his female slave. Her name was Mariyah, or Mary, and she was originally a Coptic Christian from Egypt. As you would expect, when Muhammad's wife Hafsa came home and found out about the sex, she became very upset, and Muhammad found himself under pressure. So he promised to stop having sex with the female slave. And when we continue reading the tafsir for just 2 verses later in ayah number 3, we notice that Muhammad was seeking to avoid further embarrassment because he told his wife, do not reveal it. Now, if you're a Muslim or if you're considering converting to Islam, you might be questioning the validity of this embarrassing story in the tafsir.
His slave girl, Mary the Copt, he wanted to avoid conflict, so he promised that he would stop having sex with Mary.
So too with the story of Hafsa and the slave girl. The interpretation that David referred to is only one, and that is mentioned in Ibn Sa'd's book. But there are other interpretations that are mentioned in other sources. For example, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was eating a foul-smelling honey, or at least that some of the wives didn't like, and he pledged to be aloof from that. And God is saying, why do you make yourself aloof from something that God has basically made permissible for you? Whatever the interpretation, it shows that there are different ways of looking at this, and David is looking at it only one way, and being critical of Islam on that basis.
What is that the Prophet ﷺ made haram for himself? There are number of stories that have been narrated in the books of tafsir, but the most authentic story is what was mentioned in Sahih Muslim.
Sahih Muslim, one of Islam's most trusted collections of ahadiths.
طبعا, I will never eat honey after that means as if he made it what? Haram upon him. That is the story mentioned in Sahih Muslim. It seems that it is the best explanation given for this ayah. Yeah? There is another riwayah that many books of hadith mentioned it, which is similar to this, but the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, there were more wives involved in this conspiracy. Al-Qurtubi mentioned two other reasons for the revelation of this. They are, to be honest with you, weak. We should not, anyway, they are weak. One is that the Prophet ﷺ had intimacy with Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala, had intimacy with his slave maid, Mariyah al-Qibtiyya, in the house of Hafsa. Then Hafsa came to know this, she became angry, and then the Prophet ﷺ said, I will never do that, or she is haram upon me. Yeah, many scholars said that this is a weak riwayah. And also the other reason that was mentioned is that there was a lady who offered herself to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ didn't want to get married to her just because of his wives or one of his wives. So Allah Jalla wa Ala said you should not have done this. Okay, but again, this is a weak riwayah.
You might be questioning the validity of this embarrassing story in the tafsir.